processes. So in the next talk, we will explore how and why fraud should be integrated into your regular vulnerability management program. Good morning, Kirill.
Hello.
I thought, why was my tablet starting to glitch? Kirill Soloyos, the white hacker. What are you doing here?
Well, I'm here to talk about Patrick, who's our next speaker. Yes.
Yes. Well, if you're ready.
If I may.
Of course, so, take it away.
You know, Patrick has led red teams and product security programs for some of the world's most important and largest tech companies. But even more notably, he's the co-founder of Hackfest, which is the largest hacking conference in Canada. It's happening in Quebec City, French Quebec. And I've had the pleasure of speaking there many times. They have this tradition in Hackfest that a speaker, especially a speaker that is speaking at the conference for the first time, has a drink before their talk. So to make Patrick feel more welcome, I brought the Hackfest tradition here back to Latvia with me. Please welcome Patrick.
Well, as one president once said in Latvia, I'll have a drink first, shall we?
Which one do you want?
And by the way, while gentlemen are having their drink, cheers, Prieka, bottoms up. I know that Patrick has brought some maple syrup for the people who will ask questions. So a round of applause to Kirill and Patrick, and we will get questions with a microphone for a change in the end.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. So let's talk about fraud today, but who I am, Kirill just said it correctly. I'm a hacker, been into security and hacking since I'm in high school. I was a former product security at DoorDash with bought Vault, which delivers here. Hackfest is 17 years old, and one of my passion is OSINT. I do testing of the government in Quebec and Canada. So we scan all their environment. So I'm always involved into security. But yeah, one of the things that I worked at in the last few years at DoorDash was integrating fraud into my project. So that's what we're going to talk today. So the agenda, first, we're going to talk about vulnerability management. Then try to include fraud into this, and how to prevent fraud with an offensive approach. Is there any finance company or people here? A little bit? Awesome. Well, I hope this is of interest to you. So let's talk about vulnerability management. First thing, what is it? It's a process that we want to introduce in our security teams. So on my side, it was application security or product security. So the application that the user used to the backend, so the cloud. We use this process to include manual or automated vulnerability into our ticket system to manage those. The main point is to fix those vulnerabilities within an SLA, so within a specific time. So we had in place, and I assume most company does, code scanning, cloud scanning with some of those tools. And then we have whatever is the internal or external pen test, a bug bounty, and you could have a red team internally or externally. All of those produce vulnerabilities that you have to manage. From those, the main objective, obviously, is to remediate those issues within a specific time, mainly for compliance, but obviously to improve your security posture. Based on this, we didn't talk about fraud yet. So why is it important to talk about vulnerability management? The main point is to understand how to include fraud into security. We talk about what is a vulnerability management, but assuming we have a pen test, a bug bounty, or code scanning, the program will definitely help you reduce time to remediate your issues, to find the issue and find the owner and send it to them for remediation. That will give you also the time to detection, how much time this vulnerability was in your system and maybe got abused over time. It helps you operationalize the ticket management. So the biggest issue that I had on this was that when I receive a bug bounty, for example, finding the owner would take me an average 2 weeks because there is no inventory of who owns what. It sounds basic, but that's one of the most important things that we had to put in place to fix the program. When this was done, obviously, we start getting metrics. So interesting point to how much time it takes to fix a vulnerability. Are we within SLAs or outside of it? And all those metrics will lead up to the board for improvement or to report if things are good or bad. So the too long didn't read, the quick version of how to operationalize this program is to, well, have a few of those steps in the process. So the first thing is to have a team that is on call. On our side, we had a team of 12. Every other week, there was someone on call, managing the tickets coming in, assigning it to the right person. So not too painful because it's every other many weeks. And then we had the ticket system where whichever the location of the vulnerability coming up would be assigned into our main system. This system will tag the people that are supposed to remediate the issue. And then if they don't fix it in time, we also implement an extension and a risk acceptance process. All this live for us in Jira, but could be any kind of system. The main part after this is the triage. We need your team to be able to understand when a ticket is coming in, find the owner, like I said, which could take a long time if you don't have your inventory, and then confirm if it's a real vulnerability. For those that do code scanning with tools like Wiz, SemGrep, Sneak, these kind of things, they can generate 100 and 1,000 and sometimes millions of vulnerability. You don't want to fix all of those, so there's a triage process that turns 1 million into a few. From those, we officially create a ticket, assign an SLA on it, and then we add automation internally, which is a great advice here, is to automate all the things, where when the ticket is created, the person that needs to fix it gets alerted on Slack, Teams, whatever tools you're using. And then when they fix it, they can update the ticket. You go and validate if it's true that it's fixed, and then move on like this, close the ticket, whatever it's been remediated, not fix, approve risk, extension, and all those things. And then you get metrics, so you can understand what your tickets are, what status they are. So you can implement an SLA based on your risk, based on the company risk, understanding that if this specific system is really critical and there's an issue on it, you will prioritize it first. My main issue was that when we connect a few tools to detect vulnerabilities, we had in the millions of finding. We were a team of 12 for 2,000 engineers, developers. That was too much and impossible. So we had to define an inventory of all our system, of all our microservices, and say this one is more important than that one, and the vulnerability will be matched on all of those, all those things. But the biggest issue was that people will not remediate issues if they were not forced to, because developers, their main KPI or objective is to deliver features, not to fix your issues. So we start with a risk acceptance process and risk extension, and we start tagging all the management of that team too, not to shame, but in some ways, just to show that this team have more problems than the other one, and weirdly things start to get fixed pretty good. So, not talking about fraud yet, the point here is that fraud can be included into your vulnerability management system. And one of the points that I want to make is most company, banks, and insurance, and all those kind of companies add a fraud team for many, many years, maybe 20, maybe 30 years. And today, I don't know here, but in Canada and US, the fraud team is independent from security. They're not under the CISO, CSO. They're not talking to each other at all. And the thing is, a fraud issue most of the time will be very similar to a security vulnerability. And the root cause of it will be also related to a regular vulnerability. Obviously, not all of them, but the main point usually is in secure design. So what I've turned out to find is the designer of the application, the one that does the little graphic and say, when the user enters the email, the next screen will show up and blah, blah, blah. They don't have security knowledge. So there's no security people working with them, or barely. There's no security review at that point, or architecture review. The designer have minimal security knowledge. And then when they send the design to engineering, engineering official objective is to implement it, not to implement it securely in a privacy good way. And then fraud happened for whatever reason, which could be pretty obvious. So just to give a few examples of what I've seen, those are basic, but you'll get a point. False identities in your system. If a customer invites someone in the platform, you give a kind of a $10 for invitation when the person joins. If there's no good security measures in place or detection, well, obviously they'll invite their friends and their friends, but they'll create fake emails and start inviting their invisible friends. So they'll make a ton of money on your side. Do you think this is not an application issue? This is very integrated into the application. We can have an insider threat doing exfiltration. It's not exactly fraud, but it's the same concept. So you get a call to your support team, and then they open the user support case, so they ask the name, the phone, so that the data show up. The issue is that when they answer the question, they also have a search field to find that person to get into their information to fix the problem. Well, if there's a lack of security issues, they can search for all customer, just do a little script that goes over it, and exfiltrate all the data. It's not exactly fraud, but it's used for fraudsters to get all the data and then phish people or do more bad things. But then this one is interesting because you can also, the concept when you buy an order in a system that is microservices and all over the place on the cloud and multiple regions. When you do an order, if you go fast enough and you kind of do a race condition, you can order something, assign the order to whatever person or delivery or something like this, but at the same time, you send 1,000 requests to cancel the order. And so if it got accepted and canceled right at the same millisecond, the order will be canceled, but you'll still receive it, or somebody is going to get paid. That's also a kind of things that is very application related. So how can we improve fraud by using security mostly? So my approach is going offensive, using pen tests, red team, this concept against fraud. The main step first is building relationship, because what did I say earlier? Usually the fraud team are external from security, and you don't want to go to them and say, do what we tell you. It's usually not welcome in enterprise. So you want to build those relationships, understand what fraud is doing, what their process is to receive the fraud case, the detection, the trend. Usually it's a lot of queries that shows, well, usually when people order things, it goes like this, but then when there's a spike, we should do an investigation. So you want to understand this whole concept. And then, obviously, you want to meet with them to verify all those use cases that happen every other day, define the process to work with them to understand if the vulnerability or the fraud case, the investigation in progress, what type is it, and if you can help. So is it a bad design, a lack of security measures, lack of authentication or authorization, abuse of a feature or function, the lack of rate limiting, like I said, with the race condition and those kind of things. So you need to define a process to identify what kind of fraud it is. And based on this, there's usually two types of fraud. So you got the criminals that would force people, con them to buy gift card or credit cards, and they will buy things on your market with it. You cannot really prevent this. You can detect it. You can work with your company, the payment system, but your application cannot really do much about it. But if it's one of those examples I give, it's technically an application security issues. So the process, when you know that a fraud is detected, you define the root cause. So validating, like I said, if it's in your application and where it is in the application. And if it is an application-related issue, you go and enter your usual vulnerability process for testing security. So you want to turn your pen testing internal team or external to analyze fraud case and define the design, not the design, the type, and then find the exact root cause, so which file, which line of code, which function is vulnerable, and then go and fix it. So that's technically the same process as vulnerability management. But like I said, we should go with pen testing and go a bit further. So we can go with the offensive process officially and apply technically your team to execute what the malicious people will do, preventively testing your application. So you got the design team, the implementation team, so the developers and others. So you have to get into their process and go and test it. So you can validate exfiltration, lack of rate limiting, or bypassing it. So I had a team in my application team that did just testing internally. And their thing was to go at specific product. One of the good examples is Twitter. If you saw this maybe pre-pandemic, they got phished and they had access to the internal admin system. And they could do whatever thing when they got access to it. When they got access to it, they can create tweets of anyone. Like they could impersonate anyone. But that was never tested because, well, you need to be an admin internally. But the idea is to get your internal pen testing team, simulate what happens when you have access to those, and how bad it could be, how bad you can impersonate or generate things and things like this. And my team was able to find millions of dollars saving by some of those tricks here on the screen, like IDOR, which is accessing a data request. The basic example is you have a URL, you have /1, and then you switch it for /2, and you have access to somebody else. That's pretty basic. It's authorization, lack of authorization, but this will help you identify issues. And the scammer and the fraudster use those kind of things to bypass and gain data into your platform. So it's very similar to application security. So you want to turn your team into testing what a fraud is for you, and that will help you out. The last one on the screen here is kind of a feature-based abuse. My favorite example is SMS and email, because many platforms, when you're a customer, you can log in and invite people into the platform, or when there's a detection, you send an email, an SMS to you, the admin, or something. But when something bad happens, you can modify who the email is sent to, or change the subject, or add HTML in it. That sounds like a technical issue, but this is used in phishing and fraud and gaining access to your money and system. So the process, like I said, is to work with your engineering team, define how you can lose money. So they need to tell you this, how you can lose client data, and obviously data in general. And then, as an improvement, when you got all this, because it's included in your security process, which works, which you have the metrics, well, you can have metrics to follow the fraud. Is it going up? Is it going down? Disappear? So mitigate it or fix. How much money you save? And that's a good point, because in security, in companies, we're seen as an expense. Most of the time, we need to be seen as an insurance or a way to save money. And by doing this, it's a bit easier, because you'll see how much security issues that you fix, how much money you save, because you were losing already money, and then you patch it. So have those metrics, build dashboards, present this to your leadership, and then it turns, like I said, security into saving money. Will help you out. And the fun thing is that it turns into prevention. It's not just about detecting a fraud when it's happening, which is what I saw in most company, bank, etc. So this is kind of the introduction. I hope you enjoy. If there's any question, like I said, I'm from Canada, so I brought some maple syrup. Please ask any question. And then, as this is an introduction, I also have a blog post. If you want to register to it, a little shameless plug. I'll post in the next few days the article with the full detail of that talk and go a bit deeper into how to test and what to test. But thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick. So, I brought your Maple Joe. This is syrup, not alcohol. Don't mistake it. All right. And please do raise your hand. I will go into the room and see where we have the questions. Real dark Canadian syrup. You can't buy it in Remy, OK? So, do raise your hands. Who has the first question? Right here. Yes, yes, yes. We're going to bring you the microphone right here. And if it's a good one, you get Maple Joe.
I wrote it in Ment as well, but yeah. There is plenty of technical detection tools for those technical vulnerabilities. Are there any great tools to detect those fraud-related vulnerabilities?
Yeah, good question. How can we detect fraud with tools? The main there is, but I don't think there is that are fraud-related. Actually, I've never seen it directly, because it's kind of a mix. So you have, like I said, lack of authorization. You can find this with security tools. The main issue is that most fraud are business logic. It's the abuse of the system. The basic example I give sometimes is when you buy something online, you will add something to your cart, you will do a checkout, so it's like a 6 steps process. What happens if I go from step 1 to step 6? A tool doesn't think about this. Maybe with AI eventually, but we're not there yet. So it's about training your pen tester or application people to understand how to abuse the feature they put in place. So it's very contextualized based on what you do. Yeah.
All right, syrup number 2.
Yeah. Hello. Would you prefer or like your team being embedded into software engineering team or working as a separate team?
Good question, and that was a fight, a constant fight at the company. Needs to be a mix. I had a lot of people in this previous job that was saying all security people should be developers, which makes sense to be with the engineering team and develop securely with them. It does. But you cannot run a security program with just developers. It doesn't make sense. So you need kind of an half. What I put in place was what we call a DRI, so responsible of a specific team. So my application security person own whatever specific system and teams, and they work with them full-time. That was, well, full-time, half-time, and the other half was to implement technically code scanning or doing pen tests, remediation, something like this. So, but you need this relationship. And the biggest issue, well, at least for me at that time, was to get into the planning of the engineering. Because you're not part of what they define they're going to do in the future. And then the biggest issue at that point was we should have been in the planning of the product team that defined what the engineering team is going to do. So you need to shift left on the planning and then tell those teams, well, I see security issues there, but I assume there's going to be fraud on these functions, so let's work together to fix it. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Last question right here.
Okay, hello. For the software testings, for example, I heard one approach to some companies getting dedicated time in the year, or week, maybe a shorter time of period to test the software and testing with the non-IT people or mixing together. Have you ever experienced for the fraud detection in the big corporations or dedicated internal attacks tests or come up with some successful results?
So if I detected fraud in internal or external pen tests? Sorry.
Internal.
Internal? I'm sorry. So most of the fraud that we detected was, it was kind of a mix. We usually find that by working, like the previous question, like by working with the engineers to understand the system, and in the workflow, the data flow of what was happening, we could see what was that. We could see that there was a fraud. On the other side, the fraud team had a lot of detection that says, like I said, like the trend of requests are like this, there's a spike, that's where they detected. But that's too late, because it's already happening. So what we turn out to do is understanding those trends, what they are, and what the root cause is, and then understanding, let's say, it's a lack of authorization, and then we start testing for those issues on across the board, on all applications. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's kind of the approach that we use.
Excellent. Turns out all you need is syrup to get those questions. Patrick, thank you very much. And a gift from Latvia.
Awesome.
Here you go. Patrick, thank you very much. Patrick.